Red Bull Racing enjoyed one of its most dominant runs within a Formula One season. Red Bull scored a mammoth 759 points as a constructor, won 17 out of 22 races. They also had the most consecutive finishes in the top 2 within the 2022 season. The 2022 season introduced aerodynamic technical regulation changes by introducing ground effect racing cars back to the grid. Red Bull were the only team which provided a masterclass response to the said regulation changes, with its RB18 showing no signs of weakness on any given circuit in the F1 calendar. In today's episode, let's analyze the RB18's key design elements, which differentiated it from its rivals, providing that extra bit of performance. But before we begin, subscribe to the channel and have that notifications bell turned on to be made aware of our future uploads, as we have plenty coming up during the Formula One off-season. The Red Bull RB18 will go down as one of the most successful F1 cars in the sport's history, in taking Max Verstappen to his second consecutive world title, and the team to their 5th Constructors' Championship, their first in 9 years. This dominant run by Red Bull during the 2022 Formula One season was possible due to the strong performance the RB18 exhibited, outclassing its rivals. The Red Bull Technical Group, which has Adrian Newey as its chief technical officer, created the perfect car to master out every circuit the car would be racing at. The car is powered by Honda's powerful, reliable and compact RS621, a refinement of the power unit introduced in 2021. Around this, Red Bull created a car with distinctive and key elements, taking advantage of the 2022 technical regulations. Let's take a look at the main elements, where Red Bull outclassed its rivals in terms of raw performance. First key element the Red Bull design team developed is the car's underfloor. The underfloor is absolutely key to performance under these regulations, with downforce generated by tunnels either side of a central flat keel. The speed of the air flowing through these tunnels and the air pressure differential between the underfloor and the upper surface of the car creates massive downforce, effectively sucking the car to the ground. But Red Bull's treatment of the tunnels is quite different to that of any other car. Others have created a teardrop-shaped central keel to shape the tunnels around, but the Red Bull's keel is far less uniform in shape. The roof of the tunnels also appear to be higher and more arched. The combination of the profile changes of the keel and the varying height of the tunnels seems to be an effort at carefully matching the volume of the tunnel along its length to give a more consistent airflow, and at no point has the car been seriously troubled by the porpoising phenomenon seen elsewhere. The key to these regulations has proved to be not how much peak downforce can be created by the floor through high-speed corners when the rear ride height is low, but how much can be retained in slower corners when the ride height is greater. The Red Bull's floor arrangement is much more tolerant of ride height changes than others, even if GPS data suggests it doesn't achieve as high a maximum downforce as the Ferrari or the Mercedes in faster corners. Even the profile of the edges of the inlet vanes to the tunnel are non-uniform and seem to be matched to the profile of the tunnel. Red Bull used a variety of inlet vane and floor edge arrangements to tune the car to particular circuits. These changes would vary aero characteristics of the car and the center of pressure acting upon the front and rear axles. It suggested the team had a very high fidelity control of its underfloor airflow. Second key element of the RB18, which differentiates it from its rivals, is the suspension. Red Bull, like McLaren, responded to the new regulations by switching around their suspension from push rod front, pull rod rear to the opposite. Red Bull felt that the pull rod arrangement at the front, with the rockers up high, allowed a better airflow route to the tunnel inlets, while at the rear push rod arrangement gave a better, stiffer and lighter mechanical installation. Previously, the high rockers of a pull rod rear had allowed more scope to powerfully develop the brake duct shapes, but with these a standardized item for 2022, that scope was no longer there. The rear suspension had a notably long travel to accommodate a variety of ride heights. It would sink very low at high speed to reduce drag, even though it usually had a greater static ride height than any other car. This was a key part of the car's consistent straight line speed advantage over the competition. To get the car to sink in such a way would require a relatively soft suspension springing rate, and on other cars such a setting would induce bouncing. The Red Bull floor's resistance to aerodynamic stalling was probably part of enabling the softer suspension to work. On other cars, notably the Mercedes, the suspension had to be run stiff enough to keep the car outside of the ride height speed combinations, which would induce bouncing at a frequency and would then cause the car to be bouncing on its tire sidewalls too. The Red Bull was seemingly completely immune from this. At the front, Newey had opted for a multi-link arrangement once again, with the upper forward link mounted high and the upper rearwards link lower to resist the dive of the car under braking, thereby limiting the rear ride height increase and the downforce loss it entails. A beautiful detail was having the ride height adjuster on the external part of the suspension for easy access. Usually it's within the central part with the rockers. The multi-link arrangement, with separate attachment points for the various suspension links, will be heavier, but it allows those links to work more independently and thereby give a better ride quality. This gives a more stable aerodynamic platform. As a side benefit, the car will be better over the curbs. The third key element of the RB18 is car development at Red Bull. The RB18 has been extensively developed aerodynamically, but perhaps the most significant development has been its weight reduction program. The car began the year a long way over the minimum weight limit. The aerodynamic loads induced by the powerful floors mean they must be heavier than before to remain rigid, and the new 18 inches tires and bigger brakes are much heavier than the previous 15. These key elements have been the factors for the RB18 being such a dominant car over the entire 2022 season. But what about next season? With the aero testing limits imposed on Red Bull due to finishing P1 in the constructors and due to the 10% reduction in aero testing due to the team breaching the 2021 budget cap, the RB19 essentially could be much slower and less dominant next season. With those facts in mind, what do you guys think? Will Red Bull dominate the 2023 season all over again? Or will Mercedes and Ferrari take the challenge to the Milton Keynes-based team? Let us know in the comments section down below.